A few days ago, the country of Turkey held both parliamentary and presidential elections. Superficially, little changed. The largest party, the Justice and Development, or AK Party, managed to keep control of the parliament through an alliance with the small far-right party, and Erdogan, the incumbent president, won re-election. But a series of constitutional amendments passed last year means that Erdogan now has almost no oversight, and seemingly free reign to remodel Turkey as he sees fit. One side will tell you that Erdogan is a strongman who just wants to make Turkey great again. But the other claim that he's an Islamist dictator preparing to turn his country into the new North Korea. This is what the hell is going on in Turkey. In a world full of countries which are poorly understood, Turkey is exceptionally poorly understood. Our story starts at the end of the First World War with the loss of the Central Powers, including the Ottoman Empire. The Allied powers had been planning since the middle of the war how they would split the Ottoman Empire into chunks, absorbing some of it into their own empires and declaring even more as zones of Western influence, whatever that means. This partitioning even extended into the region of Anatolia, which the Turks thought of as the heart of their country. An Ottoman army official named Mustafa Kemal declared that breaking up the empire to that extent was in fact not okay, and led a bloody, 4-year-long war against the occupying troops. The Allied population was tired of war, and eventually they decided to cut their losses and recognize the Turkish government. Mustafa Kemal would keep his position as dictator until he died on the eve of World War II. His ideology, focused on national identity and secularism, redefined the Turkish system so much that he was granted the title Ataturk, Father of the Turks. It's important to understand the differences between the American idea of secularism and the Turkish idea of secularism, which is descended from the French Revolution. In America, the state cannot directly encourage or discourage religion, even extending to allowing government officials to make religious statements.
So help me God. So help me God.
However, in Turkey, religious freedoms only exist in the private sphere. Theoretically, the government is even less influenced by the religion of its citizens, but at the expense of the citizens' freedom of religion. These rules have always been a little peculiar in the Islamic world, and the last few decades have seen the weakening of relatively stable and secular governments in Syria and Iraq. In their place, divisions between Islamic conservatives and secular nationalists, such as the Kurds, have molded the landscape of the region. Kurds make up somewhere between 15 and 20% of the Turkish population, mostly in the southeastern corner of Turkey, and Iraqi Kurds gaining independence would almost certainly mean some form of revolution in Turkey. Erdogan's most successful tactic has been using the large amount of state-run media to show himself as a simple nationalist, protecting a unified Turkey from those who might undermine the nation, whether that be Kurdish separatists, Erdogan's former ally Gülen, who many of Erdogan's supporters believe to be part of an international conspiracy against Erdogan, or anyone else who speaks up against him. The majority of Kurdish separatists are progressive, anti-authoritarian, and secular, so opposition to them has been slowly distancing the Turkish people from Ataturk's ideas and accustoming them to the government's crackdown and expanding authority. It is ironically the desire for stability that has convinced most of the Turkish voters to encourage Erdogan to make Turkey more like the rest of the Middle East. However, Erdogan's consolidation of power doesn't do much to help his reputation abroad, and he has had trouble in the last few years with dropping confidence, especially in his economic policies. Fears about Turkey's direction have even stopped discussions for Turkey to join the EU, and this puts Turkey in a very precarious place economically. Liberalizing too much would put himself at risk for another coup, and over-reliance on nervous foreign investors has only destabilized Turkey's economic growth. And so Erdogan has begun to shift towards a more self-reliant and state-centered Turkish economy. A few years ago, Erdogan's government made a set of goals, which they called the 2023 Vision, though Turkey is unlikely to meet any of the important economic goals. Economic growth has always been one of Erdogan's big promises, so not delivering could mean slipping support in Erdogan's working class base, possibly even putting him on course to lose the presidency, breeding fears that he may even stop allowing elections. What exactly Erdogan does next is pure speculation. With his new executive powers, he has an ever-growing control over Turkey. The only thing we can be sure about is that at some point in the conflict, there will be winners and there will be losers, and Erdogan will do everything in his power to make sure that he is one of the former.